I'm Brian.
And we are the Keto Wizards. Today we are going to make one of my favorite recipes. It's one of my go-tos that I make on a regular basis. I made it even before we were eating keto. I love making this food. I love making New Mexican kind of dishes. My husband Jay is from El Paso, so I got introduced to a lot of different new flavors. And we're going to show you a little bit more about this when it builds and grows into what is going to be the most delicious pork Chile Verde you've ever had. It's really simple to make, and we're gonna get started. There's two parts to the Chile Verde. The first part is an enchilada sauce, which is gonna have mostly vegetables that are gonna be blended up, and then that will be the simmering stew that our pork is gonna be sitting in for hours while it tenderizes. So what we're gonna do first is we're gonna cut up some vegetables into nice big chunks. We're gonna start with 8 tomatillos. So you might, when you see them in the market, they're fairly common depending on where you are in the country. We're in the Southwest, so they're really easy to find. But a tomatillo looks kind of like a weird leafy pumpkin thing. And then when you take the layer off, this is how I do it. You kind of pull it off, and then you do a quick little twist, and it pops right off right there. And you're gonna feel it's a little sticky, and that's just the way tomatillos are.
Right, so I'll give them a quick rinse.
Yeah, I'm gonna rinse this baby off a little bit. So I've already rinsed these off so that they're not as sticky. And all you need to do is cut these into quarters, maybe. You can even do halves, no biggie. But if you've never seen a tomatillo before, it looks like a green tomato.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, if you're in a part of the country where you can't get tomatillos, first of all, I'm sorry. Second of all, you should be able to substitute maybe like some green tomatoes.
A few green tomatoes.
And other than that, I'm not sure which you could do.
So if you don't have tomatillos in your area, you can do green tomatoes. If you're from the Midwest and there's no tomatillos, you're gonna find green tomatoes, I'm pretty sure. And that's just gonna be the bulk of your salsa. You're not gonna have as much heat. And tomatillos have a very unique flavor of their own too. It's
almost peppery maybe?
A little peppery, like a bell pepper that's got almost a citrus, maybe a citrus kind of aspect to it. But they are related to the tomatoes. They are still part of the nightshade family. And they're delicious. I love tomatillos. So we are going to have 8 tomatillos. I put them in our pot. We're gonna have a big stew pot because these are gonna stew for a while.
And make a pork jacuzzi.
Yeah. So, and then 1 jalapeno pepper. And depending on your heat level, if you like a nice amount of heat, and I should be doing this with gloves, but if you're working with peppers like this, do not touch your eyes or anything else. Down with your fingers after you use these. Wash them very good because it's painful. And depending on your heat, I'm gonna take out a big chunk of the seeds. But if you like the heat, leave the seeds in there. That helps the heat level. Or add more jalapeno. You can add as many jalapenos as you want.
I like to remove the seeds most of the time, even though I do like a lot of heat. So I usually do add more peppers. And for me, I find that the seeds lends a little bit of bitterness. So I tend to take those out myself.
We're also gonna add 2 green onions. And they just need to be in chunks. Nothing fancy about that. So 2 green onions. We're gonna add, I'm adding 3 cloves of garlic. I like garlic. I think the recipe I'm basing it on, which I will find in post below, says 2, but I am.
Yeah, you'd be hard pressed to not put, enough garlic in there for me.
And one of the things I like to do, especially when you're using whole garlic for flavor, is to smush it a little bit, because when you do that, it releases the oils, which is the delicious part of the garlic. So you can just use the side of a knife and you squish it, and then the paper comes off really nice and easy. But you see how it's squished, so there's like all these layers of garlic oil that's gonna go in the pot and give another depth of flavor. So I'm going with 3 cloves. Does
Yep.
that sound good?
Sounds perfect.
Okay.
And as that actually cooks, that garlic is actually going to break down even more, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not going to be big chunks in your salsa verde. It'll break apart.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna blend it all up
And
too.
that's going to
That's
help
gonna
even more.
smush. And then our last bit we're gonna add in here. So we are in the Southwest, so we are fortunate enough that we have roasted hatch green chili that are from Hatch, New Mexico, which are fairly easy to find around here. And you know what? I'm gonna do these.
So now with the hatch chilies, a good substitute that you can get probably in most parts of the country are going to be like an Anaheim chili, maybe even a Pasilia chili somewhere. Those are fairly common. And then to roast them, simply you just put them on a cooking sheet, put them in the oven, a little bit of oil maybe. Put them in the oven at like 350 and let them roast until they turn nice and dark. And then throw them inside a little Ziploc bag, right?
Yep, and then you can freeze them.
And then you can freeze them.
And you can use them all year round because at the moment we're making this, it's September, and this is toward the end of hatch season. Hatch season's about August, September. So this is my last bag. I need to get more so we can have some. So I'm gonna so my recipe says to use 3 peppers, and I'm gonna go a little more crazy than that because the last time I made this with the hatch, I thought it was gonna have more heat and it didn't. But depending on your heat level, again, and if you don't have hatch and you just don't like it super, super spicy, go with an Anaheim or a Pasilia pepper and maybe start with like 2 or 3 of those in this part of the enchilada sauce and work your way up. But these are beautiful. I'm gonna use them all. And I'm just gonna cut the little stem parts off. And these also do have, I'll show you, these do have some seeds in there too. But you can just clean them out like nice.
Super easy to clean out, actually.
And you don't need to chop these into small pieces because, yeah, we're gonna grind these down. This doesn't seem to have a stem. Not very seedy, so that one's good. And the seeds tend to coagulate up by the end, so once you cut the top off, a lot of them will disappear. These are delicious as stuffed, like chili rellenos too. I love Southwest food. A little smoky bit too. This is the charred part. I mean, throw some of that in there too. Why not? Because
it's all flavor.
That's the flavor, right?
Yep.
So we are gonna go a little nuts. So this is gonna be a little hotter than that. Man, so good, so flavorful. So once we get all those large vegetables for our enchilada sauce, we're gonna cover it with chicken stock. We actually have just some organic chicken bone broth. So if you've got your own homemade bone broth, that's good. If you just have some chicken stock or chicken base, you can do that. You wanna cover the vegetables. So basically you want enough in there to cover. Usually I've found that I need a whole one of these things. And I'll probably put a little water on top of that too, just to make sure it's nice and covered. And we are gonna put this on the stove and bring it to a boil. And we're gonna let the vegetables boil for 10 minutes. So we will see you after that. Okay, so we're putting it on the stove just like this. You don't need to cover it, you can. We're gonna let it get to a boil, and then as soon as it's boiling, I'm gonna set the timer and let it boil for 10 minutes so that the vegetables get soft.
Ooh, look at that.
You can smell the pepper coming out of that. Yeah. So this has been boiling for 10 minutes. You can see the liquid's reduced a little bit, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna strain the vegetables and add a little of the broth to our enchilada sauce over in the blender. So our vegetables boiled for 10 minutes. So we got this kind of soupy little mess of chilies and garlic I know you love the sound of chilies and garlic.
I do.
And you can smell that, huh?
It smells delicious.
So we're gonna make
You sure you don't want to just eat that?
I could, but we're gonna make it even more delicious. So this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna drain the vegetables as best we can and try to get everything out of here. So you can see the tomatillos. Here, I'll show you some of the tomatillos. It's kind of funny. So the tomatillos, once they boil down, they're just like stewed tomatoes now. And you can see the tiny little tomatillo seeds in there. Those, you can't even tell the texture on those. So you can leave all those seeds in there. They won't affect anything. There's that nice chunk of garlic there that's kind of broken down a little bit. Little piece of hatch there, can't lose that. So once you boil all the vegetables down, we're gonna drain the vegetables and we're gonna put them in a blender. I love my Vitamix. We had a blend tech for a while there and it did not work for us. And we went to Vitamix. Yeah, I love Vitamix. Vitamix can blend up almost anything. I think I've seen it blend golf balls.
I was watching one of their promos, and the guy actually made soup. Like, just put in fresh vegetables and some water, and then the process of breaking it down and blending it all up heats it up enough that when he took the lid off, there was steam coming out and made like fresh tomato soup.
That sounds delicious.
Yeah.
Maybe we should do that. Make a vegetable or a tomato soup.
Right. Why not?
I hope that wasn't a hot chili. You can see all those vegetables cooked down. It's kind of a little bit of a mush here. And if you want to drain this through a sieve or something like that, just know that you want to reserve the broth. You want to reserve the juice. So don't drain it to the point that you don't have the broth left. So you want to reserve the broth. So I got pretty much all the vegetables out of there, and there's probably
about 2 cups.
About 2 cups of broth left. So once you have drained all that, then we're gonna add some more flavor. So cilantro, fresh cilantro. I love cilantro. I know it's a love-hate relationship with a lot of people.
Not everybody like it.
So either you love cilantro or you hate cilantro. I think it's actually I think a genetic thing. There's a genetic code where some people taste soap when they eat cilantro. I love it. So I've got approximately that's about a cup, 3/4 of a cup, depending on what you want. But I love cilantro, so I'm gonna put more in there. If you want to do less, that's fine. But this is gonna brighten it and freshen your sauce. So I'm putting about a cup in there. We have about a tablespoon of cumin. I put a little extra chili in there, so I might throw a little more cumin in there, maybe. But a tablespoon is good. I love cumin. We have a teaspoon of, this is Mexican oregano. You can use regular oregano if that's all you have. We can find Mexican oregano out here pretty easily, but it's a little different than regular oregano. It's got wider, broader leaves. There's these little flowers in there. You want to take a look at that a little bit. So it's slightly different, but if you can't find Mexican oregano, regular oregano is fine. And then a half teaspoon of just black pepper. So we're gonna add that. And then we're gonna take our broth. And what you wanna do is you wanna add enough broth to cover your vegetables. But don't throw out the rice, save the rice. But this is just for the enchilada sauce. So we're gonna add enough just to cover the vegetables. We're gonna blend that.
It's gonna get loud.
It's gonna get loud. Well, we're gonna go slow because it's still hot from the pan, so you gotta be careful a little bit. So what I'm looking for when I grind this is that the cilantro is nice and chopped in there, so you don't see big chunks of cilantro. If you want to blend it a little more, what will happen is it'll aerate a little bit, it'll blend the flavors a little bit more, and you'll get a slightly thicker texture than this when you blend it a little more. But you can kind of see just like how thick that is. So this is an enchilada sauce. So if you didn't do the pork chili verde, if you just want an enchilada sauce, you can stop here. and make some really delicious like chicken enchiladas or something like that with this as your enchilada base. So this is an enchilada sauce. It's super tasty. And actually, you want to try a little taste of that?
Yes, I do.
So that is just the enchilada sauce just done, and that's good to go.
Oh, so that's got a nice kick to it.
The hatch coming out on that one.
Yeah. That's really tasty. So the the garlic in there is just spot on. It's actually you wouldn't think that you would get that much of a garlic flavor out of just 3 cloves, but it really kind of balances well with everything else. It's smooth. It's got a nice texture. It's absolutely delicious. And our dogs are, they love it around here too, right? They're all excited.
Okay, so that was the first part of this recipe. The second part is going to be searing up our pork and adding some more seared vegetables to kind of give our Chile Verde another base. So we are gonna go and move and cook some pork now.
Awesome. Cheers.
Okay, so next part of the pork green Chile Verde, we've got to make a pork. So what I have is, this was called pork cushion. I love this meat that we get just because it's soft and tender when it's cooked. But if you can use any kind of pork, but I recommend, if it's easy for you to find, it's just a pork loin. The recipe I usually use says 2.5 to 3 pounds. They measured me out about 4 pounds, so this is about almost 4 pounds of pork. You use what you need. So we're gonna sear this. A little bit of salt and pepper. Pan's hot. Here we go. And you can chop up your pork however big or small. I like nice small bite sizes just because I want as much pork on a spoon as possible. So the smaller I get it, the more little pieces of pork I can fit on a spoonful. And the more tender it's gonna be when it's all done. Raise my heat up a little bit. I want to make sure we keep that hot so it sears and doesn't steam. You don't want it to steam and boil, you want it to sear. And while that is searing, over here I have a little bit left of that broth from the enchilada sauce. The recipe I have says to just put a cup of vegetable broth in here, but that's silly because this is vegetable broth. And it's nice and spicy with the hatch chilies already. So I'm gonna just reuse this sauce as the base of our Chile Verde. So I'm keeping that. It still has like some tomatillo and some hatch seeds in there. I'm just leaving it in there for flavor. And as this sears, when you start getting it so that it is cooked and not pink anymore, then you want to transfer the pork into the pan. And then we are going to sear some onions and peppers. Once we remove the pork from the pan, we'll just sear the onions and peppers in the juice that's left over. And that's it, really. I mean, see how easy that is. It's very few ingredients, fine ingredients in most cases. And you can put this on, a couple hours before you're ready to eat. It simmers for a couple hours and just gets more tender over time. It's delicious. And have that ready for a big hearty meal when you have some friends over. Okay, so this is browned. I would like this a little more seared, but this was a lot of meat in this pan. So I got rid of some of the little cooking liquid and let it sear a little better. So make sure you have a nice hot pan. But then once this is brown, just put it in your pot pork is out. There's usually enough fat at the bottom for your last vegetables, but I'm gonna add just a little more avocado oil. I'm gonna turn down my heat a little bit. Just gonna add just a little tiny bit more oil. At this point, you could probably use some butter too, because what we're gonna do is we're just gonna caramelize some vegetables. So I got 1 chopped onion. And then the rest of my chilies, the recipe's gonna say maybe 1 Anaheim chili or 1 Hatch chili or 1 Pasilia, whatever you wanna do. We have a couple chilies in here. And these are chopped as well. And we're just gonna caramelize these, brown these up a little bit. So there's a little bit of the pork fat in here, and I put a little more oil in there, but if you wanted to put some butter, that might have been fine as well. Oh, that smells good. You can smell the onions. I love caramelizing some onions, and especially when you mix it with some of the peppers. Oh, it smells so good. These are your aromatics. And this is just gonna add another layer and depth to your Chile Verde. So depending on how you are with onions, I know my hubby is not a big onion person, so I usually will even chop these even finer. But they are gonna be stewing for a couple of hours, so they will break down and be very, very, very tender. So if you have an onion texture thing, it's fine. You're not gonna get that crunchy onion flavor. It's just gonna bring a little bit of depth and texture and flavor to your Chile Verde. So, and you can see like it's already getting a little dark right there, and you don't wanna get much darker than that. Otherwise it's gonna be scalding and you're gonna have that kind of burnt flavor, and you don't want that. Can you smell that over there, Brian?
Oh, absolutely. It's smelling delicious.
I'm gonna let that brown just for a couple more minutes, and then we're gonna add all this to the pot. Apply the enchilada sauce to the pot, and we'll let it simmer from there. All right, so our aromatic vegetables have cooked down. You can see the onions are just nice and caramelized, and that's about as caramelized as you want them to get. You don't want to get them too dark, and you don't want to burn them. So just keep an eye on them. You still want them seared, so you're getting that sweetness. So we're just gonna add that to the pork, like that. Just drop some.
Keep in mind too that if you like open a window and while you're doing this, your neighbors are gonna come over.
Probably. But this is ours. They cannot have it.
Oh, you put up like a $10 entry fee.
First time I made this for a group of people, it was our D&D session. And I had to go. I made a big batch, but I made a double batch, and then I had to go, and I came back, and it was gone. I was a little sad about that.
Yeah, that didn't last.
No, it didn't last. So yeah, if you invite people over, just know that you're not gonna get a lot. All right, so we have our pork in there. We had that little tiny bit of broth at the bottom, and we have our aromatics. Our enchilada sauce that we just whipped up, we just pour that on top. So try to make sure you don't waste any of that enchilada sauce, because that is the flavor. That is the yumminess in there. And if you want, what I will probably do is I'm gonna get a little bit, that's what I'm gonna do. You can get a little bit of more chicken broth or water. I mean, if you are out of chicken broth, I just happen to have an extra one. And mix that around a little bit, just to make sure you get all that enchilada sauce. And you can always add a little bit more broth to your Chile Verde too, depending on how thick you want it or how far you want to stretch it. So mine, my spoon. Oh, it's right there. I like it a little thicker, but I also got 4 pounds of pork in here versus the 2.5 to 3. So I might thin it out just a little bit with some more broth just so it will stretch. But you can kind of see how thick with that enchilada sauce that chili's gonna be. So it's really kind of up to you. But this is it. So once you have it all mixed up like this, so you have your pork, you have your enchilada sauce and your aromatics, then you are going to cover it and you're gonna let it simmer on low, which we'll put on that low here, for an hour and a half, covered. And that's gonna combine the flavors a little more. It's gonna make the pork a lot more tender, and it'll simmer for an hour and a half. Then we will take the lid off, let it reduce for a little bit, and you've got pork chile verde. Simple. All right, so this has been simmering on low for an hour and a half, and we're just gonna take the lid off. So, and you know you got some good like green chili going on in there. You've got these little green pools at the top there. I'm probably gonna give it just one little stir. Just make sure there's nothing sticking at the bottom, but I've never had any issue with that. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, look at that.
Looks like a bill again. That's up.
So at this point, we're gonna let it simmer for another 30 minutes uncovered. That's gonna reduce the liquid a little bit, so it's gonna thicken. If you want it a little thinner or you need more liquid, I recommend adding the liquid after the 30 minutes it's cooked down so that you know approximately how liquidy you have it. So we're gonna keep it on low where we had it, and we're gonna let it simmer for another 30 minutes uncovered. All right, so this has been simmering for another 30 minutes here in the pot. We're gonna give it a nice little stir. You can see how much it's thickened. And this is your pork chile verde. This is what it looks like when it's done. So this is what you'd put on a plate if you weren't keto, with some rice and beans and stuff like that. But we don't need any of that stuff. If you wanted to serve it over cauliflower rice, that would still be delicious. If you wanted to, if you had some keto tortillas and you wanted to do it with this, you could serve it like a taco style, burrito style, however you wanted to do it. But what I want to show you is how tender this pork is. So we're just gonna get, I haven't even tried this yet, and I am so confident that it's gonna be awesome. We're gonna see how this works. So I'm gonna get a nice good sized piece of pork here. I know I like the small bites better, but you can see there's the pork, and I just want to show you how tender this is. I didn't even cut it with the spoon. I squished it, and look how tender that pork is. It just fell apart just like that. Look at that. Lovely. Lovely.
So this is our pork chile verde
Yep, pork chili
that you
verde.
have slow cooked for how many hours now?
It was 2 hours.
Yum.
2 hours. That's it. So I topped it with some cotija cheese. You could also maybe put some shredded pepper jack. Might be also good. I've had it with shredded pepper jack, and it's delicious. And I'm also going to eat this with some pork rinds. So in Spanish, these are chicharrones. I can't roll my R's. If you can. Chicharrones. But I used to love these in a tomatillo sauce in El Paso. So if you want to be adventurous, and I highly recommend it, top your chile verde with some chicharrones. They will have a different texture. They'll get a little softer, but it brings like almost like a bacon flavor a little bit to it. So you have the pork that's been simmering plus the pork that you're putting in there. It's a pork explosion.
Porkopolis. Porkapalooza.
Yeah. But it's delicious, and we made it nice and spicy. You can tame the spice. You can beef it up with maybe like a serrano pepper.
That will definitely keep up the heat.
If you were really crazy and you had some ghost pepper, I mean, that's crazy.
That's living on the edge right there.
That's crazy. But this is authentic Southwest food. It's pretty easy to make. I've made it several times. I really enjoy making it. So I hope you guys enjoy it too. And if you enjoyed this video,
please like, subscribe, hit that notification bell.
and we'll see you next time.
Ding, ding, ding.
So the pork is just cooked perfectly to tender. It literally just melts in your mouth. There is such a good smoky, spicy, salty deliciousness that is coming off of that salsa verde. It's absolutely beautiful. Good job.